Now on to the heavy business, the heavy lifting. We now have to get on to the agenda of the findings of the Legal Redress Committee. As many of you know, on July 29th, 2021, there was an incident of a young African-American man of the age of 8 years old having a strap wrapped around his neck at the Chilmark Community Center, which is run by the Chilmark Town Affairs Council. I am going to put in the chat right now the findings of the Legal Redress Committee. At the executive committee, we shared a screen. I think we have a lot of people on this call, so I'm not sure sharing a screen is advisable. I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to just talk through the findings, and then we have a number of committee members that are here. I'd like to thank Alex Palmer, Joel Weintraub, Maria Ruggiero, Joe Solito, Gretchen Underwood, and Tony Kaufman. This was not an easy task. The story in itself is traumatizing, and to do the necessary work and to ask the questions, pointed questions of people that don't necessarily want to give you straightforward answers is not easy. And to revisit this, me personally, this was some of the most stressful work that I have done as a member of this branch. This makes the Article 10 look like nothing, in my opinion, personally. So the question that this committee was seeking to answer was the July 29th, 2021 incident a racially motivated event? And if not, was it racially insensitive? In order for an event to be racially motivated, there has to be intent on part of the aggressor, meaning the person who's doing the action, which is causing some sort of disturbance, has to intend based on race for that to be the case. Here we have an 8-year-old victim, an 8- and 9-year-old aggressors. While the committee understands that an 8- and a 9-year-old can have the prerequisite of intent, we are unable to find that these 8- and 9-year-olds had that intent, in part due to the information available to us. We were not able to speak to the parents of the 8- and 9-year-olds that were responsible for strapping this rope around the victim's neck. We were not able to speak to the employees of the Chilmark Town Affairs Council who had direct supervision over these children. Chilmark Town Affairs Council cited that they were unable to produce these employees because these employees at the time were 17 years old and therefore are minors. During our investigation, we met with the parents, the grandparents, and the uncle of the victim. We did a public records request for the town of Chilmark. We examined the police report. We met with a group of representatives from the Chilmark Town Affairs Council shortly after they gave their report to the town of Chilmark. You will see in this report, there's a record appendix. It's over 100 pages. I recommend that you go through that and you read that. We have our ideas of what happened, but the reason we decided to include the record appendix is for you to make your own determinations based on the language. What we did find is that this event was racially insensitive. For an event to be a racially insensitive event, one does not require the intent, but it's the appearance. How is it perceived? And to have a young man have a strap wrapped around his neck while in the setting of a camp is racially insensitive, especially him being in a predominantly white setting and one of maybe 2 children of color that were at the camp during that week. As a result of us finding that this is a racially insensitive event, we are publicly asking the Chilmark Town Affairs Council to do 2 things. One, the family of the victim has an attorney, and while we gathered some of their demands in August, We defer to this attorney to speak to the present demands of the family, because they may have changed, they may have morphed. We don't know. We can only speak to what they said in August, and we are now in September. So Attorney Hall, at a Lawyer for Civil Rights, can speak directly to the demands of the family. We have a different set of demands as a civil rights advocacy group. And the demands that we have is that in the state of Massachusetts, we have anti-bullying and anti-harassment laws that are applicable to schools. We would like those laws to change and also be applicable to camp settings, because we believe that if this child had some preventative measures in place at the camp, this would not have happened. Specifically, and let me just bring it up. Specifically, we would like to enter into an MOU with Chilmark Town Affairs Council for them to amend their governing documents so that it reflects Mass General Law, Chapter 71, subsection 370, and Mass General Law, Chapter 76, subsection 5, be applicable to the way it runs its camp. And of the reason we want that to be applicable can be broken down into three basic arguments. Chilmark Town Affairs Council must respond to hate and bias incidents involving campers. That is pretty self-explanatory. Chilmark Town Affairs Council must take affirmative measures to prevent discrimination, harassment, and bias. Now, this gets into about 6 different subsets. 1, it must ensure that the camp curriculum does not include any stereotypes that are discriminatory or demeaning. 2, the skills and knowledge necessary to develop the skills and knowledge necessary to respond to harassment and bullying should be taught to all campers. That would be applicable here because the victim of this aggression was being bullied for a week prior to this event happening. So we believe that if there's a necessary training of both staff and campers, this could have been prevented. 2, plan to protect and support campers who are at risk of being bullied or harassed due to their race or religion, disability, gender identity, or sexual orientation. I think the documents speak for themselves, but I think there was a lack of awareness on Chilmark Town Affairs Council of how to deal with a situation like this when it occurred. And I believe they were called out in the police report for that. If a camper is found to have a bullied or harassed others, they may be subject to discipline action. Now, in this instance, the aggressors were asked not to come back to the camp. We think that the camp should deal with these campers and somehow figure out a way of working with them while in the program, because you lose complete control when they go away and you don't know what happened to them. And to be clear, there are a number of victims here. We have the victim who had the rope tied around his neck, and then we have the children who were allowed to do that. They are also victims, and there should be a plan in place for Chilmark Town Affairs Council to address issues like this so it doesn't happen in the future. And if it does happen in the future, how to deal with those children more than just expelling them. Develop comprehensive policies and procedures for reporting, investigating, and responding to harassment or bullying. It appears through how this event worked its way through the procedures of the camp that there weren't really procedures on how to deal with this. And it's my hope that in developing those procedures, the camp can prevent an incident like this from happening again. And then last, staff should be trained to implement anti-bullying policies and procedures. That goes without saying. I think the last one's the most important one. Chilmark Town Affairs must adopt best practice to help it implement the above obligations. What we mean by this is this isn't just a conversation and then we move on. This is structural change that needs to occur at a summer camp to prevent things like this from happening in the future. In order to get that structural change, You don't have that happen with 1 or 2 conversations. You need to hire someone from the outside to come in and look at everything from the top to the bottom to make sure that this camp is prepared to deal with situations like this. Anyone from the committee? Did I miss anything?
I don't think so, Arthur.
Alex? You're good.
That's okay, Arthur. You did a good job. Thank you, Arthur.
Yes.
Are there any comments or questions?
Arthur, didn't you say you were going to post something in the chat? I don't see anything.
Oh, I guess I posted it directly to Carrie. She's the only one who got it. Okay, hold on. Sorry. Here it is. Boom. There it is. So, folks, it goes.
I have a question.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yes. Mike, in this MOU, is I assume it stands for Memorandum of Understanding. Could that apply, and a change in the state law, or in addition to the state law, could that be included all camps on Martha's Vineyard? Because what's to stop these, which happens so many times? I don't know, I mean, there's several other camps. What's to stop these children or their parents are registering them in another camp on the island?
Right.
So I don't know, the legal wording, but could it include all camps, after school programs, whatever, entity other than the schools? So that's my question and concern.
I think anything's possible. I mean, what we would like to do, the Legal Redress Committee has been charged with engaging Chilmark Town Affairs Council on the MOU. Right. And I believe that maybe one of the things that Chilmark Town Affairs Council, along with the NAACP, could do is engage other camps and see if they want to be a part of this process of self-evaluation, I guess, is what you'd call it, and figuring out how to prevent harassment and bullying at their camps. What strikes me is when I was a kid, I was in Joel Weintraub's 4-H camp. I went to the Vineyard Haven Yacht Club. I went to the Boys and Girls Club camp. I had a great time in camp. And I think one of the things that makes writing this report so hard is that this kid had his childhood interrupted. And I guess as the adults on the island, we need to make sure that no other child has their childhood interrupted with adult issues. Getting back to the mens rea of intent, while we can't find intent, I really hope that those children did not know what they were doing when they did it. I can't say for sure that they didn't, but I hope that they don't. And these are adult problems. The fact is that it weighs on us what happened. I'm not even sure that the aggressors are even aware of what they did. I can't know. I haven't spoken to them. Any other questions?
Yes. My question is, I don't know the answer. I'm just trying to wrap this around my head. The people who were taking care of these day campers were 16, 17-year-olders. They cannot be, if I'm not mistaken, cannot be questioned, or they only have certain liabilities. Why are they hiring somebody who is not legally responsible for any outcomes like this that could happen? I'm confused.
I think that's a widespread practice of hiring people who are 16 or 17 years old in camps as counselors, I believe.
Well, they're not legally responsible.
No, I'm just saying it's not uncommon.
Right. They have CIT programs.
I think it should be looked at.
And Russ, it's a good question. The director of the camp, we never had a conversation. We weren't allowed to speak with the director of the camp. There was an adult who directed the camp.
That's what I was going to ask.
Where were they?
It's in the
These these are people who are looking over children, who none of these people have any legal rights and cannot be questioned or
Yes.
held responsible. I'm confused.
Somebody's responsible, though. I mean, they're a supervisor.
Well,
Right,
who
exactly.
is it? Because I'm sorry. Go ahead, Kathy.
No, I was just saying, I agree with Joel. It's a very, very common practice. And that's why they have CIT programs, counselors in training,
Good.
and they
Yes.
are, they, you know, and the hopefully director, assistant director, senior staff person should be responsible for these CITs.
Yes.
Also, and okay, there's confidentiality, but you know, were these CITs, if we want to, if they were actually that or camp counselors, were they disciplined? Because apparently this child had been bullied for a number of days.
Yes. Yeah.
And the other thing is, I would, you know, as what Kathy has said, I would include, you know, the YMCA, the year-round, you know, organizations like the Boys and Girls Club, the YMCAs, any organization that brings kids under their venue, be it a Sunday school or a Hebrew school, whatever it might be, to widen, you know, to that extent. The here would be the sailing camp too, but that's camp.
Ms. Moore?
My concern is for follow-up, and I wonder if, one question, did you find the council members that you talked with responsive to this? Do you have any feeling about whether the recommendations will be put in place? And question number two, what can we as an organization do to make sure we're prepared to talk with them and even prepared to identify some resources for them if they take this seriously and prepare for next year?
So that's an excellent question. I'm not prepared to answer for Chilmark Town Affairs Council. I know that they've made their report. There have been a number of news articles that they've been quoted in, but I think the proof is in the pudding, meaning the reason we're asking to enter into an MOU with them is once this fades in people's memory, we want to make sure that that camp is a safe place for all children to attend. And so we believe that if the camp had implemented some of these anti-bullying and anti-harassment measures, that this would have been caught before it became a problem. And I do believe that as of now, the camp would like to engage. I don't know what form that takes. The Legal Redress Committee, pursuant to the Executive Committee, has been charged with continuing that conversation. And I look forward to our follow-up conversation with them. I believe that there's a number of other social justice community groups that would like to be involved, and I don't see why they shouldn't be. I believe a coalition, there's strength in numbers. But I think that we are not service providers. We are advocates, and as such, it is our job to advocate, but we cannot get in the business of actually providing a service, because then we won't be able to advocate effectively, because we will have culpability. So I think if anyone on this Zoom call is interested in being a part of that next part of this story, please email me, because we would like a diverse group from our group to be involved in helping the Chilmark Town Affairs Council write its next chapter. Ms. Godowski?
My question is, I understand and I completely agree that we need to educate Chilmark, but going back to what Marie just said, we're advocates. We can't put a plan. I didn't understand that, Arthur. Can we join with these other people? We have an education committee. Can we do some positive campaigning for the benefit of all children in our changing times. And get it out to all these things, to the sports groups, to the camps, to the Y. You said it already covers schools, but
Yeah.
enforcement versus negative reinforcement of kindness and, that watchful eye, et cetera, et cetera. Just a thought. I mean, I'd be interested in helping do something like that with the other advocate group.
Say something, yep.
Yeah. I think that's a good idea. I think there's policy reform that needs to take place. There's also a public campaign, as Ms. Hunt was just saying, see something, say something. I think if this bully had been prevented from being enabled, it wouldn't have gotten to where it got. Mr. Power.
Yes, this is just a general comment or observation. I think what we're dealing with here is a systemic and deep cultural racism. I don't know where we go from there, but that's something that I think needs to be confronted.
If, may I speak? If the, this memorandum of understanding, if the camp accepts that, there's a procedure what happens with racial incidences, bullying, harassment. So any school group has to obey that law. Any school team has to obey that law. The camp doesn't have to obey that law unless they accept that this memorandum of understanding, whatever it's called. So if it applies to them, the incident would have never happened, or it would have been dealt with in a good fashion. So, all right, that's it. Okay.
Arthur,
Yes.
I want to apologize to the group. Unfortunately, I had 2 meetings scheduled, and you can't see me on this because I'm on another Zoom as well. But I just wanted to share with everybody that I agree it's systemic, and as we discussed in executive session, lynching on Martha's Vineyard has been going on for years. It's been squashed, and people need to be educated, and they need to know that we're in the 21st century, and this has got to stop. And I want to thank each one of the Legal Redress team. They did an exemplary work here. And I think that there are other people here. We're a mixed group, and we need white members in this group to step up and be a part of this additional committee that's being set forth to handle this situation. And we need to go forward. Thank you. Dr. Lorna speaking.
Anyone else have any more comments?
I have a question. So who signs the MOU on behalf of the town?
Well, it would be an MOU between the chapter and the camp.
The camp itself, not their supervising entity, but. Okay.
So the Chilmark Town Affairs Council is a nonprofit that has an MOU with the town to use the community center. And so the idea is twofold. One, to get the Chilmark Town Affairs Council to adopt these rules as if they adopt these laws as if it was applicable to their camp. But two, I believe there's some outreach that we could do, at least on a local level, and then maybe a state level, to get the definitions of these laws to include summer camps. Because the second the definition widens, we get to the policy change of getting these camps to think through these issues. And I believe that if this law was applicable to Chilmark Town Affairs Council, they would have had a plan in place. If you read the police report,
Yes.
states about the lack of planning for this type of situation.
Yes.
So that's why we included the record appendix. Go through that, read that for yourself. See the pictures of the camp and how it was set up. One of the things that I have a hard time believing, or I have a hard time understanding, This child screamed for help. No one came. And this camp is wide open. So where were these camp counselors? That's a question that I have that I can't answer. Because the only people that Chilmark Town Affairs Council has put forward for us to talk to are a team of attorneys and public relations professionals. No one had firsthand knowledge of what went on at that camp. So what are we really going to get out of a conversation with people who are trained to wordsmith other than what they want us to know? So that said, we can't answer the question of intent, but we know that there's enough there to know that that kid should never have had the opportunity to put a rope around another kid's neck, regardless of race.
Yes, right.
Anything else?
Well, I'm just going to quickly add, and particularly that boy, as it's been mentioned, had been seen and been known to be bullying and taunting other kids, including the eventual victim, and should have been more carefully watched.
Recording in progress.
Yeah, I mean, you know, the question,
There's some responsibility.
we were not tasked with answering the question of negligence, but that's what's here. That's what's throughout, that's threaded throughout the story.
Yeah.
Is how were these kids given the opportunity to do what they do? Kids do crazy stuff, but I never did this as a child. So, and especially not in a supervised camp situation. So, you know.
So were parents ever addressed on this? I know you can't, but to me, that kind of behavior is learned at home before it ever gets to camp.
So
It's all over the TV.
that's a very interesting question, because we were not allowed to speak to the parents of the aggressors. So there's no way of us understanding that. What their home life was or whatever, you know, we just can't, we couldn't get there. And I'm not even sure that even if we had been able to, we could still answer the question of mens rea, because no one was there. Literally, it was these children by themselves. There were no adults in the area around them, and that's what's problematic.
Yes.
I think that in the early days of speaking with the parents and what they want to see happen, they had mentioned things like restorative justice and follow up with the aggressors, educators and counselors. But and I know that the parents, when they send their kids to this camp, they're not given the information of other parents, and I think that could have nipped a lot of these things got squared away. Hey, my kid said your kid said this to him today at the beach. What's going on? Let's talk. They were prevented from that because there's no directory that says, okay, this such and such kid belongs to this adult, and there's their number and there's their email address. I know that when I went to school or when I was at the Vineyard Haven Yacht Club, there was a directory of everyone's information. So you could contact people. Yes, Ms. Moore?
I listened to the selectmen's meeting at which they heard the initial report. And one of the selectmen, I think it was Jim Malcolm, made the point that ultimately the town is responsible in that the town gives permission to the camp through the Affairs Council, but they are the authorizing authority, I believe. And if that's true, it seems to me the least we could do is to send a copy of the report, to ask for a meeting with the selectmen to review what we've found. It seems to me it has been couched in very generous terms, Arthur, I must say. And I think you're right that is the correct role for us, but it needs to be out there in the public. And I think the town itself needs to be held responsible.
I think that sounds like a great motion. Can I get a motion?
Second.
So moved.
All in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed? Any abstentions? Ms. Moore, thank you for making that suggestion, because I think we're all sitting here being like, we want something to change. But I do think that we need to go to the source, the root source of the power here, which is the town. So Alex, make sure that we have that reflected in our minutes.
Okay.
we
And
can
so the
put it on a
wording,
letter.
the wording is we're holding the town responsible, but can you elaborate on that?
Fine.
Yeah, go ahead, Ms. Moore.
That we,
Tricia,
well, yes, we believe that the town is ultimately responsible. We would like to share our report with the town at a board meet, at an official board meeting. And would like to ask them to follow up for next year's planning to make sure that these recommendations are put in place.
Thank you.
They're the ultimate authorizing body, aren't they, for all of these entities? Everything falls
Yes.
below
that's
them,
my
so
belief.
they're the top.
Yeah.
Thank you.
they should have daycare in there as well, because that goes on all year round.
Okay, folks, I think that wraps up this agenda item, which took up half of our meeting. In one respect, it was a good meeting in that we got to see some young people running for leadership of NEAC.
Yes.
It's good to see that that's happening. We did a lot of heavy lifting during this meeting.
Mhm.
Ms. Moore, thank you for your motion, because I think that that's exactly where we need to go next. In addition to engaging Chilmark Town Affairs Council, Alex, Joel, Maria Ruggiero, Joe Solito, Gretchen Underwood, and Tony Kaufman. This would not have been possible without your hard work.
Mhm.
Alex and I went back and forth all week long. I don't think we would have imagined where we were last Saturday compared to where we are now. It's nothing like the dignity of work to work out some issues. And I believe that this is what the NAACP does, and this is what we do well. We have a procedure for it. We did it. And I just want to thank everyone who's on this call today for being involved. And I look forward to engaging everyone in the future on the next chapter of this. This will not happen on the island again unless it's gross negligence and adults are just simply not paying attention. But if they're in a summer camp setting, this can never happen. It's 11:57. This was very draining for me. So can I get a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Moved.
All in favor, say aye.
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 All right.
All right. See you next month.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Arthur, for your hard work.
Yeah,
Yes,
thank you
indeed.
so much.